Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be finding all 6 trig values of these angles. And we do need rational denominators, so what that means is we're going to be using the unit circle and we want to make sure that there's not a square root in the bottom or something like that. Alright, so the very first thing that we need to do is with 5 pi, we do need to figure out the coterminal angle. So what's the angle between 0 and 2 pi that is equivalent to 5 pi? So what we're going to do is we're going to add or subtract 360 degrees or 2 pi until the angle is between 0 and 2 pi in this example. So we're going to take 5 pi and we're going to be subtracting 2 pi from it until we get it between 0 and 2 pi. So I'm going to go, instead of 5 pi, since that's going to make it irrational, we're going to do 5 minus 2. That's going to give us 3. That's still not between 0 and 2. So we're going to subtract 2 again, and that will give us 1. This is going to be equal to 1 pi, which is also just pi. Okay, so let's just write this out first. This is equivalent to pi. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to pi on the unit circle and we're going to figure out all of these values. So let's first start out with sine and cosine. Okay, so sine of 5 pi, we're just going to be using regular pi and that will get us to 5 pi. So remember, sine is the y value. So we're going to go to our unit circle at pi and we're going to write down the y value. So here's our unit circle. We're going to go to pi and we're going to write down the y value. So at pi, or at 5 pi, and by the way, you get there by going 1, that's 2 pi, 2, 4 pi, and then 5 pi here. So that's another way that you could do this. Okay, so the sine of 5 pi is going to be 0. All right, now let's look at cosine of 5 pi. And that's just going to be the x value at pi. So the x value at pi is going to be -1. -1, so that is our answer for cosine. -1. Okay, now we're going to find it for tangent. Okay, and tangent is going to be y over x or sine over cosine. So since it is equal to sine over cosine, and we know that sine is 0 and cosine is -1, then we can go ahead and say that this is going to be 0 over -1, but 0 divided by anything is going to be 0. So this is going to be 0. All right, now we're going to work with our reciprocal functions. So let's first start with cosecant. And this is just going to be 1 over sine. Okay, so we can just do 1 over sine, which is going to be 1 over 0. And since 1 over 0 does not exist, then we're just going to say dne. Okay, remember this is the reciprocal of sine. So the reciprocal means you just do 1 divided by it, or you switch the numerator and the denominator. So that one does not exist. All right, now let's look at secant of 5 pi. Okay, so secant is going to be the reciprocal of cosine. So we're going to do 1 over -1. And 1 divided by -1 is just -1. So secant of 5 pi is going to be -1. All right, and then the very last one that we're going to work with is cotangent. So let's do cotangent of 5 pi. And it's going to be the reciprocal of tangent. So for tangent, we had -1 or 0 over -1. So we can do the reciprocal of that or we can do the reciprocal of this. But let's just do it this way. So it's going to be -1 divided by 0. And since anything divided by 0 does not exist, then this does not exist. Okay, so let's just highlight some of our answers here. Okay, sine. Tangent is 0. I'm trying to make it where it's just easier to read here. So there were 3 of our values, and here are our other 3 values. Okay, hope that you guys enjoyed this. So let's move on to the second one. And this one is working in radians again. So first we're going to have to get -22 pi divided by 3 between 0 and 2 pi. So since this is negative, we're going to have to add 2 pi until we get to a number between 0 and 2. Okay, but whenever I say add 2 pi, what I really mean is take out the pi, and we're just going to be adding 2 to this. So let's go here. We're going to add 2. We're going to do -22 divided by 3. Okay, we're going to add 2. Now this is going to give us some decimals, so we're going to convert this to a fraction. This is still not between 0 and 2, so let's add 2 again. Still not between 0 and 2. Add 2 again. Still not. And here we go. Now we're between 0 and 2. So this is going to give us 2 pi divided by 3. So let's write this out. Okay, and I'm not really sure why I put the squigglies. This is actually just equal to. Okay, so since this is equal to 2 pi over 3, then we're going to be figuring out the value of 2 pi over 3 for each of these. So let's start with sine and cosine. So let's do sine of negative 22 pi over 3. All right, so we're just going to go to 2 pi over 3 on the unit circle, and we're going to write down the y value. So let's go to 2 pi over 3 on the unit circle, and we're going to write down this y value. Okay, so here's 2 pi over 3. And just by the way, you get to that by going around 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you would get to 2 pi over 3 here. So if you want to do it that way, you can. All right, but the y value is going to be root 3 over 2. So this is simply going to be root 3 over 2. Okay, now let's look at cosine. And that's just the y value at that angle. And the y value is, the x value at that angle. So that's going to be negative 1/2. Negative 1/2. Okay, now let's look at our tangent. And remember, tangent is going to be y divided by x. So here we can do y or sine divided by cosine. So we can do root 3 divided by negative 1. Or you can keep change flip and actually solve it out. So let's just go ahead and do that. Root 3 over 2 divided by negative 1/2. So we're going to keep change flip. So negative 2 over 1. The 2's are going to cancel out. So we're going to get negative root 3 over 1, and this is going to give us negative root 3. Okay, so now let's find our reciprocal functions. So let's start with cosecant. Remember, this is the reciprocal of sine. So since it's the reciprocal of sine, that means I'm simply just going to flip the bottom and the top. So this is going to be equal to 2 over root 3, but this is not a rational denominator. So we are going to have to multiply the numerator and denominator by the irrational denominator, which is root 3. So let's multiply by root 3. We're going to get 2 root 3 divided by root 3 squared. This is going to be root 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. So this is our cosecant. Okay, now let's do our secant. And this is going to be the reciprocal of cosine. So here's our cosine. It's negative 1/2. So we're just going to do negative 2 over 1. And negative 2 divided by 1 is just negative 2. So secant is going to be negative 2. And then our very last one that we're going to do is going to be cotangent, which is the reciprocal of tangent. So here is our tangent. We have root 3. So since it's root 3, it's going to be, and it was negative root 3, so it's going to be 1 over negative root 3. But this does not have a rational denominator, so we are going to multiply both the top and the bottom by root 3. And 1 times root 3 is just root 3. So we're going to get negative root 3 divided by root 3 times root 3, which is just 3. Okay, let's do some highlighting. So this is just easier to see. Sine was root 3 over 2. Tangent was negative root 3. Secant was negative 2. And then we had our cosine was negative 1/2. Cosecant was 2 root 3 over 3. And then our cotangent is negative root 3 over 3. Okay, let's do our very last example. We're going to do 855 degrees. So with this one, we are just going to figure out where this is between 0 and 360, and then we're going to go from there. So let's subtract 360 because we want to get it between 0 and 360. So we're going to subtract 360 from 855. This is not between 360, but this is between 360. So 135 is going to be what our coterminal angle is going to be. 135, I believe. Yes, 135. So we're going to be looking at 135 degrees on the unit circle to figure out what it is for 855. So let's start with sine. This is going to be the y value at 135. So let's go to 135 on the unit circle. 135, that's right here. And we're just going to write down the y value because we're looking at sine. So that's going to be root 2 over 2. Okay, so root 2 over 2. Now let's look at our cosine. That's going to be our x value. And the x value at 135 is going to be negative root 2 over 2. Okay, and now let's look at our tangent. And that is going to be the y divided by the x, or sine divided by cosine. Since it's the same thing divided by the same thing, root 2 over 2 divided by negative root 2 over 2. Anything divided by itself is 1, but since 1 is a negative, then we're going to get negative 1. Okay, so now let's do our reciprocals. We're going to start with cosecant of 855. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so this is going to be 2 over root 2. But this does not have a rational denominator, so we are going to multiply both the numerator and denominator by root 2. So we're going to get 2 root 2 divided by root 2 times root 2, which is just 2. Since there is a 2 in the numerator and the denominator, this is just going to be equal to root 2. Okay, now let's find the same thing for secant of 855. And we're going to get the exact same thing. So we're going to have negative 2 over root 2. But since this is the exact same thing except it's negative, we're just going to get negative root 2. So we already solved out that problem whenever we did cosecant. All right, and then our very last one, let's do cotangent of 855. This is going to be the reciprocal of tangent. Since tangent is negative 1, we're just going to do 1 divided by negative 1. And that is going to give us negative 1 as our answer. Okay, let's do some highlighting so we can see clearly what is going on here. Okay, there's our sine. Here is our tangent. Here is our secant. And then for our cotangent, we have negative 1. For our cosecant, we have root 2. And for our cosine, we have negative root 2 over 2. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you have any questions. I would be very happy to help you out. Goodbye.